Sorry. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Intro to Tech, Intro to React workshop. All right. My name is Joshua Silva. I'm the projects officer for ACM, so I manage all of the teams that write our in-house software. So I've been using React for about 5 years, and I'm going to teach it to all of you. So React is a UI library that helps manage like very complex state in your applications. It's primarily for web, but there is a package called React Native that is for mobile. And if you know React, it actually is a pretty good way to get into like the mobile development with React Native. Y'all can go ahead and scan the QR code, check into this event on ACM's portal. I'll give you a second. All right. So I guess the first question that you might be like wondering is like, why do you want to use a UI library? Well, vanilla JavaScript is like totally fine for static, like non-interactive sites or maybe very little interaction. But if your site is highly dynamic or very interactive, very complex, a UI library is going to help you manage the complexity in your application. It's going to make it much easier to modify like the UI as the user is using your application. So I put 2 code snippets here. This is like a very basic example of vanilla JavaScript versus like what React looks like. And it's slightly shorter with React, and this is just a basic example, but this small difference builds up really quickly. Every time I add a button, you know, this difference increases, right? So eventually when you have like a full web application, I mean, I couldn't imagine doing like some of the stuff that we've built in ACM projects with just vanilla JavaScript. So UI library is super helpful for like creating more complex web apps. Why React specifically? It's the most established UI library for the web, and it has a massive community. So that's 240,000 stars on GitHub as of yesterday, around 45 million downloads weekly on NPM. And according to the latest Stack Overflow developer survey, 46.9% of professional developers use React. So that's more than any other UI web framework, more than any other framework at all, really, other than, well, I guess Node's not really. Anyway, so React has one big principle that I think everyone here needs to kind of try to get a grasp on by the end of this, and that is UI is a function of state. So what this basically means is we have state in our application. Let's think of state as like variables, right? We're passing this variable into the function that is going to generate our state, generate our UI, right? So this is what that kind of looks like. We have a state of, let's say we have a variable that is a list, and it has 3 items in it. It has apples, bananas, grapes. So we have this function here called grocery list. It takes in that state, and what it returns is HTML. And that HTML is UI. Essentially, HTML is your UI. And so this is what that would look like if it was rendered out, right? So that is like the principle of React. That is like everything that you do kind of follows from there. In order to accomplish that, I'm just going to mention this real quick. If you don't really get it, that's fine. So React has this concept of a virtual DOM. In order to know what a virtual DOM is, you have to know what the DOM is. So let me real quick, if I go to google.com, right, and I inspect any of these pages. Did you guys do this when you were kids? Just like go into the, web pages and look at all of like the code. You can maybe modify some stuff, and all the other kids think you're super cool. You hacked it, right? So this is the DOM. What I'm looking at right now. All of these divs that are nested, right? This is what your actual HTML looks like that is being rendered out. And React, in order to be more efficient, React uses something called a virtual DOM, which basically is like internal representation of what the DOM is supposed to look like. It's like it's something that is computed, and then whenever changes happen to our state, instead of directly modifying the DOM for every little thing that changes in our application, React does some really smart like calculations under the hood, where it takes this virtual representation with maybe, let's say we have this UL that has two LIs in it, one for apples, one for bananas, and the user clicks a button and adds grapes. React's going to do all the smart math behind the hood of like figuring out, oh, we need to add another UL here, right? And it's going to do that with the virtual DOM first, and then it will apply those changes to the DOM once it's all like computed. So it's much more efficient that way. So if that like didn't really make sense to you, that's okay. It doesn't actually affect how you use React, at least while you're starting out. So that's the big thing. We're going to get into the project. There are more slides, but from here on, you might want to follow along. I don't have like the repo up currently, but once we finish this, I'll publish the repo. What I do have, is a setup guide. So go ahead and scan that, or you can see there's a URL down there. Can everyone see that URL? Either one, you're going to follow that guide. You might want to be able to like copy some code here. Sorry, I'll go back for anyone who needs to catch that. So like to set up a React app is I think it's pretty straightforward. Hi, welcome. You are going to need a terminal, so go ahead and like open one up if you haven't already. And if you're using Windows, I'm going to recommend that you use WSL. And if you don't know how to do that, it's in this guide. You can go to, we're going to follow these Node.js setup instructions, and up here you see there's this install WSL thing. That's because Windows is like not the most friendly for NPM, like web development stuff in my experience. And so I found the easiest thing to do is the one-line install of WSL, and then from there, working inside of WSL, you can follow the rest of the guide. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this command for installing NVM. NVM is the Node version manager. It basically, React runs on this, is running on something called Node, which basically allows us to run JavaScript outside of like the outside of the browser, and that's how we run the actual application. So I need to install Node, so I copy that I need to install NVM, so I copy that command, I just hit paste, give it a second. For me, it's already installed, so that shouldn't take too long. And then we're going to do, the next step is, I scroll down here, NVM install Node. So Node is an alias for the latest version of Node. So NVM install Node. Okay, and then that also shouldn't take that long. I notice everything is like slower in here than it is wherever I was working on this, but hopefully that doesn't take too long for you guys. So yeah, I'll give y'all a couple more seconds. And if you install this version, the next thing you need to make sure that you're using this version. So NVM use Node. It's going to make sure that your current Node version is set to that. So anytime I run something with Node, it's going to use that version. Cool. And then, so that's the first step. And then if I go back, this command right here is how you create a new React application. It's not from scratch. There is like a specific template that has all this like setup. So if I paste this one in there. The only thing we need to change is the project name. So today we're going to be making a simple to-do list application, nothing crazy. So I'm just going to call it to-do, or we'll call it to-do app. Hit enter. And we're going to, I'm going to say no to that. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start it. And give that a second. So what it's doing right now is it's going to actually start up a development server that's going to serve our React web application on localhost. Can everyone see? I like move this up a little bit. over here too. Yeah, might take a second to like install all of the dependencies. Let me see. Make sure. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So that is good. And so if you actually, you can, if you're on Mac, it's Command. If you're on anything else, it should be Control. But if you hold Command or Control and you click on this, most terminals will allow you to just directly open up like the URL. So you can see this application is running on localhost. And this is like the default application for a new React app. It's running on something called Vite, which you don't need to know too much about. It's a build tool, so it's how we take our code and build it into an actual web application that can be served. Stream died? Cool. Entire screen. Sorry, my Mac is weird, so it just dies sometimes. Okay, so I'm actually going to kill this real quick by hitting Control-C, and I'm going to open up whatever IDE you're using. Go ahead and open that up for this specific project. So I need to cd into to do app, and then I'm going to hit code dot. Okay, so this is what our application project like structure looks like. The important ones, really, we have like our source folder that has all of like our code. We have the public directory, which just has like static assets that are, you know, not really don't have anything to do with like the interactive code. We have some, I mean, we have assets in two places, but anyway, we have this app.jsx file. This is like where our actual application code like starts. This is like the root component of our entire application, and I'll explain what a component is. But yeah, so this code right here is what is making this whole thing. But what I'm going to do is just get rid of all of it. And in its place, I'm just going to put, sorry, this should be, I'll make a H1, and I'll just say to-do list. That's what we're making today. There is some like in the index.css, there's already like some CSS code written for us. For this, I'm just going to leave it in there because it looks slightly better than just plain HTML. I'm not using these assets, so I can get rid of those. So this is what I have right now, basic skeleton. I'm also going to just delete that. Okay. So if I do all of that, and then I run npm run dev, that's how we actually start up our Vite server on our own. That's running. I go back here. There we go. We have to-do list rendering on the screen. Cool. So forgive me if I go like out of order on these slides. There was one thing I wanted to do. I think here, we'll move this up. Okay. So in React, right, everything is a component. React basically it abstracts all like elements on the page into components, and this is how components work, right? Like I said earlier, or like UI, right? Every component is one function. You can see I have like the function declaration. It takes in something called props, and then it can use those props to like, I don't know if there's anything I can do about it here. Sorry, Mac issues. That's interesting. Okay, we'll look into that for next time. Yeah, so basically you declare this function, and as long as it returns HTML, it's a component. That's all you need to really know about that. To call a function that is a component, right, it looks like HTML as well. So this is something called JSX, where basically we're allowing our like JavaScript and our HTML to be one, and they kind of like we're mixing them together so that we can just straight up return HTML instead of having to like do any DOM manipulation ourselves. We just return the HTML that we want to see on the page, and that's our component. So, all right. To actually make our to-do list, right, we need some like elements in here. So I'll just make those. Let's make it a UL and have an LI and something I need to do. I need to do a thing. So I'm just going to put that on there. And you know what? Actually, I need to do another thing. So we have 2 list items in there. And if I go to our to-do app, it should show 2 things. I don't like, actually, okay, I might get rid of these, some of this styling because it's a little annoying parts of it. See. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of, this might actually be too much, so I'm just going to get rid of all of this like styling stuff. Okay. Am I going a little fast? I feel like I'm going kind of fast. Yeah. All right, I'll try to slow it down a little bit. So this is like what our to-do list looks like now. A little bit simple, just got rid of all like the styling. I don't know why this doesn't render as an LI as well. Oh, that's because that's a 1. It's like really tiny on my screen. Here, can y'all see that better? Okay. So LI there. There's our list, right? Very simple. Our finished product is not going to look very pretty unless we have time to get to like the styling at the end. Okay, yeah, so there's our list, but this is static, right? This list won't change at all. Like nothing about our code is modifying the list. So at least let's put like all of these things into a variable that maybe we can start messing with later. So let's say I'm going to say const, let's see, like to-dos equals, and I'm going to put the strings in here of the things I need to do. So to do a thing, do another thing. And instead of doing this where like I have to write them all out one by one in HTML, I'm lazy, so we're just going to loop through the whole thing and take each item in the to-dos array, and we're going to make an element out of it that we want to put on the page. So part of JSX is if I want to introduce some like JavaScript code to do that, I need to add curly braces like this. And inside of the curly braces, I can, basically I want to return a list of elements. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to take the list that we already have, to-dos, and there's a special function called map on all lists or arrays in JavaScript where I can, if I call map, I give it a function, and what that function is doing is the map is going to iterate through each item in that array. It's going to call the function on that item, and whatever's returned is what I'm going to put into the new array. We're making a new array where we're mapping each item in the previous array to the new array with this function. Okay, so say to do. And I'm going to make sure you use parentheses here for the body of your function, because parentheses has an implicit return, so you don't have to like explicitly say like we're going to return this, right? So if I just do that, and then I put my element in here, so I'm going to make an LI, and inside we're going to say to do like that. Okay, so I'll try to break this down a little bit more. If you take in, so what this does, it's going to go through each to-do, and for each to-do, we're going to return an LI that has this as like that to-do as the body of the LI tag, right? So what that looks like is this. So it's the same exact thing, but now if I were to add another item, I can just add it directly here. So do a third thing. Yeah, not very creative, but oh well. And it automatically adds it there. The reason it's able to just add it is because Vite has some very cool tooling called hot reloading. So if I make changes to my code, it automatically makes those changes on my page, and I don't have to restart the server or anything to make those changes apply. Cool. Okay, but this still isn't dynamic enough because we need to be able to add items to our to-do list, right? So we're going to change the way we do this in order to allow that. Yeah. Okay. So two things that I probably should have mentioned a little bit earlier. Number one is, if you're not so familiar with JavaScript, I want to make sure this is like clear what some of the things I'm doing is. Number one is JavaScript destructuring. So I'm not sure if you're like aware, but you can do this in JavaScript where obviously you can declare an array at, like this, but you can also kind of do it the other way around where you make each item and you assign it to elements in the array. So if I have an array of 1, 2, 3, I can say, you know, this array of A, B, C equals array, and I get basically 3 variables out of this. So it's the equivalent of saying like A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, right? And the same thing works for JavaScript objects. So if I have an object that has A, B, and C in it, I can define an A, B, and C just by using this syntax here, where I have the same object, like curly braces equals. Yeah, honestly, that's. Yeah, so I have, it works both ways, okay? And then to go even further, they have this, this like triple dot syntax where if I just want to get A, but I still want to, I want to put all of the other like elements somewhere, I can write this like dot, 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 others. And so what this does is if I have all of these, right, the A is defined as its own constant, and then the rest of them go into others like this. So you still have like the rest of them in their own object. You can also do assignments the other way. So I can have A defined in the object, and then I can just take another object and put all of its values into this object. And then same thing for arrays, basically. Just the same way as it was here. The same kind of syntax works for arrays. You just use brackets instead to signify that you're working with arrays, right? Cool. Okay, so now I want to get to React hooks. So right now, right, we're using functions as these like components, and the functions they don't really keep state. If we know like from what we've hopefully learned in our classes about like how the stack works, right? When you run a function, it allocates all that memory on the stack, and then when that function returns, right, it's gonna get rid of all of that stack allocated stuff. So it's not going to be able to keep track of any like state between renders. So every time React has to like recompute what our UI looks like, it's not going to be able to keep track of that if we just define it like this. So what React actually does, this is the part where like React comes into play, right? They define these things called hooks, which allow us to basically hold on to that state in between renders. So every time it updates, we don't lose any of our variables and stuff. So instead of defining it like this, in order to make this persist, we have to, here, I guess a good way to put it is like, let's see, actually no. Okay, so we use this thing called useState. It's already imported. I just didn't erase it. So useState is a function. And if I wrap this in useState, what I'm saying is, hey, this like value, we're going to keep track of this, and we're gonna keep it and continue to update it. So don't like get rid of it. Right, so this is kind of the anatomy of a useState. So let's say we have a counting variable, and we're going to increase it by 1 every now and then, but we want our UI to also update what the current count is. This is what that would look like. You would create a useState with an initial value. It's going to return an array with 2 items in it. That is the value that it's currently at, and then a setter function that we can use to set the value to whatever we want later. So if you remember back when I was talking about destructuring, right? If I have these like brackets here, right, that means I'm taking the array that it returns and I'm splitting it into two different variables. And then from the value, I can use that here in my HTML, and it will fill in this with the actual value. So if it starts at 0, it'll be 0, and if I increase the count with set count, it'll also update that here. And then you have the setter, which you can set count to be +1 if I click a button. I don't know if that's like how easy that is to see. I can try to like zoom in slightly. Yeah, so this says on click. So when I click this button, I want to run a function that sets count to whatever count is +1. Okay. So that's actually what we need to do here in order to allow our list to allow more items to be added to our list. Okay. So we're going to start with an empty list. I forget why that does that. So I forgot to actually do this as part of our, so what we need is to-dos and set to-dos. Okay, we need to get both of those out. It's going to complain because I'm not using set to-dos yet, but I will. We have our list. It's going to be empty. There's nothing here. Let me add something to the list. Okay, so I need an input. Type this text. And I'll make like a button which says add, we'll just call it add, right? So it's going to make something like this. It's like very basic. And now what I want to do is whenever this input changes, whenever I like input something here and I click the button, I want to add whatever's in this input box to our list of to-dos. Okay, so in order to do that, I need to kind of keep track of like what is currently in this input, and there's a pretty easy way to do that with React. You just add another use state. So I would say we're going to keep a use state that is what is like the value of this input. So we'll call it input and set input. Close state. And its initial value would be an empty string. And all we do is on change. So there's a property called on change. Anytime I make a change to like what's in this text box, it will like trigger that function to run. And the thing I want it to run is I'm going to make a function that calls set input, and I need to pass in whatever like I need to pass in the event so that it knows like what is the thing that we're updating it to. So this event object has a target which has a value. Basically all this means is we're going to get the target, which is the thing that changed, which is input, and we're going to get its value, and we're going to set this variable to that value. Okay. Okay, so we have this input now, and we want to be able to add a new to-do using this input. So I'm going to make a function to do that. I'm going to say function add to-do, and that function, since input is defined here, we can just access it directly. And what I want to do is I want to set to-dos to be in order to like do this, I could do this where I'd say, sorry, ... to-dos, and then I add the extra to-do after it. So I would say like input. Okay, so this would accomplish that, but there are some like weird cases where this would kind of introduce bugs. So what I prefer to do is, instead of just passing in the value you want to set it to directly, you can pass in a function that takes the previous value and modifies it to return a new value. And so there's reasons why this is a better way to do it, but I'm going to instead make this a function that takes in to-dos, the previous list of to-dos, and then instead of just returning the current value, I'm going to take whatever it was before, I'm going to introduce all of those, and then add the input to it. And so every time we're making a new array that has that extra input added to it. And then I want to go ahead and clear the input. So I'm just going to set input to be an empty string again. Okay. And then if I click on this add button, so I say on click equals, and then I can actually just say add to do, like that. Okay. That's the other nice thing about like JSX is I can just pass functions in directly instead of having to like define them somewhere else and then actually like and then all you can do is like use a string, and there's like very limited things you can do with just passing in normal click events on like vanilla JavaScript and HTML. Okay, so please work. Do a thing. If I did everything right, yeah, there we go. So it's going to add that list. It didn't clear the input, which is interesting. I think that has just something to do with the way we're setting it. But let me see. That'll do for now. Okay, so we do a thing. I can do another thing. So it's going to add those, and it's going to persist, right? And then if I reload the page, it's going to like forget all of that. So let's see. Does that kind of like make sense so far? How we're using these different like these states to keep track of what we have, and then when it modifies it, we don't have to do any work to update all of this UI to like add new elements. I can keep doing this as many times as I want. I can just add a new one. I can add another. I can just keep doing this, right? And I don't have to like modify this HTML, and I don't have to write super like long-winded JavaScript code to do it either. Because it automatically reacts to whatever your change in state is, right? So that's kind of the point of React, right? There you go. I'm curious why this input doesn't work. I wonder if we do like that. So add another. Oh, that's okay. That's the other thing. Sorry. So on change is going to it's going to like update what our internal representation is, but in order to actually reflect that back on the input, we need to also set the value of our input to whatever we have stored. So we also need to say that the value of this element is input, and so when those two are used together, we have to do a thing. If I add it, it will actually allow us to set the input to nothing, because when we set this state to nothing, it's going to reflect that in the value here. Okay, there we go. So some other things I could do to kind of just demonstrate more React concepts. What I could do is also break this out into a separate component for each like to do item. Let's say we have like a much more complex item, which we'll make in a second. I'm gonna move this to something else, and then we're gonna keep building more on top of it. The common practice, I guess, for React is just to make a folder called components. And in that folder, I'm going to make a new file called to-do.jsx. I'm used to using TypeScript in these. And then we're going to define our function that is going to be a component that represents just one to-do in the list. So function to-do, and we'll return. Let's see. We'll just make it a, sorry, actually it should be an li for the list item. And for now, we'll just say to-do. I need to be able to export this function so that I can use it in other files. So I just add the export keyword. Cool. And then I can import it in our app.jsx. Import to do like that. Yeah, so I'm importing it from this components file, and now I can actually use this instead of using this normal li. I can use this to do. And then I need to, well, for now I can close it off like that. It is going to complain that I'm not using this like to do, so that's okay. We'll leave it. Okay. So hopefully you can see like the parallels between the way we like use this and the way we use normal functions, right? Whenever we want to simplify like a bit of logic, we can always break out that code into another function so that we don't really have to worry about it here. We can worry about it in its own space, which is like this function, right? And so when we get more and more complex, this is more useful. Obviously, like this really doesn't do anything for us yet, but just wait. So in order to pass in arguments to our function component, we are going to say to do equals, and then we're going to set it to do. You have to make sure you put these like curly braces because this is JavaScript, so you have to put the curly braces to specify like we are breaking out of like our HTML and we're inserting some JavaScript right there. Okay. And then if I go back here, I need to actually also accept that argument of a to-do. So I need to, all components in React can take something called props, which is, yeah, what I just passed in over here is a prop. And usually they're in this like props variable, and in order to use it, I can say props.todo, and that will give us the to-do, right? So it's passing in an object of all of the things that I set on this. Yeah. What I could do just to like demonstrate this, if I also take in, let's say another thing you can do with map is you can add this like index as well. So as I'm going through the list, it also keeps a number representing what index of the list I'm currently at. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pass that in as well. Just to demonstrate that like you can pass in as many things as you want, although I wouldn't recommend going too crazy with it. And so I could actually put, this isn't going to make sense for like this kind of list, but I could put the index in front of it here. So I could say like props.dx like that. Maybe put that. It's going to look weird, but like, yeah, 0 and do another thing. That's 1, right? So it's able to also get that index out of it. But what I can do is I can utilize that destructuring that I talked about earlier. Instead of taking props like that, I can directly get out all of the variables that I passed in. So I can get IDX, I can get to do. And so then I don't need this props part because I have them declared already, right? Cool. So that should look the same. Do a thing. Cool. Yeah. So hopefully you see how like as I like pass in more data, I can do all kinds of stuff with the data in here, and I don't have to worry about it in our app.jsx. Let's see. Another thing we want to be able to do with our to-dos is mark them as done, right? So to do that, it's going to get a little more complicated because now with every task in our to-do, we need to keep track of its status and what the name of that to-do is. And so we go from just like just a normal array like this to actually adding. We're gonna turn these into objects, and I'm gonna say like name is input. And when I pass in a to-do now, this to-do is going to have. If I like look at this, let's see, do a thing. It's gonna break. It's gonna crash on me because I'm trying to put in this entire object into like this right here, and it's not gonna know what that means. So I need to make sure I say to do dot name. So I'm referencing just the name field on that object, which is a string. So this should work. Please work. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now with that, let's say we also want to pass in like a status. So every object is going to have a status, or I'll just call it is complete. It'll just be a Boolean. Is complete. And we need to set it to something to start. So to start, all of them will be false, right? None of them will be complete yet. And instead of this index, and for now, I'm just going to put like is complete. Sorry, it should be to do dot is complete. I don't need this index anymore. Let's see. So I'll even one step further. I will say if it is complete, then we need to say true. Actually, I mean, we could do like this with like an X in it, and then if it's not complete, right? This is the ternary operator in JavaScript. And then if it's not complete, it should be empty. So there, it's going to be empty. But we actually want to be able to like make this. We want to be able to change its status. So in order to do that, right? We want to, let's say we want to like click on. We'll make it a checkbox actually. So we'll do input type equals checkbox. Say checked equals to do dot is complete. Okay. So what this should do is it should have a checkbox, but I can't change the value because we are explicitly setting the value of this checked to be is complete, and we have no way to change is complete. So I can't like modify this input. React is going to say nope, this is what the value is. And now we need to, in order to actually allow us to like check that checkbox, I need to give this component some way to actually like modify its own state. So I need to pass in that setter or some function that lets it do that. I'm not going to like give it access to like everything, but I want to make some function that allows it to update its own status. So I'll just call it like, let's say toggle to do, right? So I just want to actually flip it from whatever it is. And it's going to take in an index, so whatever index we want to actually modify. And okay, so to do that, it's a little complicated, but we're going to set the to-dos. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of break this into three parts. Basically, what we want to do is we want to return all of the elements before this item, and then we're going to make some modifications to the item, and then we're going to return all of the elements after that item, and all of those things are going to go into a new list. Okay, so three parts. Watch. So this, sorry, we are going to make this like a function just like the previous one. So prev to-dos, and it's going to return this with prev to-dos. I'm going to slice it so that it only gets the ones before this item. So it should be 0 to the index. And then here we're going to put our new object. I'm just going to leave that blank for now. And then after prev to-dos dot slice. If this looks bad, I promise it looks worse in normal like JavaScript. And then here we go from whatever the index is +1 and onward. I think just by doing that should do that. And then here we want to set name is going to be what it was before. So that's prev to-dos at this index dot name. That stays the same. And then, and then is complete is going to be basically going to be not whatever it was before. Dot is complete. Okay, so that's like a little tricky, but once you get used to like this kind of destructuring, it kind of, I hope it makes more sense. You could also do this a lot more manually with like some assignments. You say like, this is before, this is after, this is whatever, but yeah, okay, so I want to actually tell to do, hey, here's this function, and you can use this to update your whatever your to-do is. So instead of passing in this, I'm going to say toggle to-do is equal to art. I'm sorry. This toggle to-do. And then I'm going to pass in the index that we're like currently at into this function. So what this is doing is like whenever, so now the component is going to have a function that can only set its to do because we're setting its ID like right here. And I have to accept that prop, so I have to say toggle to do here. Yeah, okay, and then on this checkbox, I need to put like an on click, and we're going to set it to toggle to do. Should be it. So when I click this checkbox, it should run toggle to do, which is defined as toggling whichever ID is in this this specific to do, right? And this is like the logic for that. So let's see, do a thing. Add that, and I click this, and boom. So I can actually change this now back and forth. If I add another thing, I can change these like independently, and there you go. I'm also just going to, what's it called? I don't really care to make this a list. I don't like those like little dots. They're not necessary anymore. Just like a p tag. Cool. Okay. And if I reload, it's going to erase those again. Let's see, how are we on time? Okay, I do have time to do a little bit more. One thing I want to add, I want to make this persistent. So we're going to keep this in local storage. We want to, whenever we like update our list, we need to update what's being stored in local storage. So to do that, we're going to use another kind of React hook. Hopefully useState kind of makes sense. It's just, it's really just figuring out how to use read the value, right, and how to write to that value. And there's like a lot of different ways that you can do it. But now we're going to have another hook called useEffect. So I'm going to go back to the slides. UseEffect, basically there's like 3 different ways that you can have a useEffect. Number 1 is you have this callback. So it takes 2 arguments. One is a function, and then the second is an array of dependencies. Dependencies meaning like I want whatever runs here to like depend on these variables, and if they change, I need to rerun what's inside of this. Okay. So yeah, so useEffect is, in this case, we are rerunning this every time one of these dependencies changes. The second is if you just leave that array empty, it will still run once on whenever the component mounts. In other words, when that component just ends up on the page, right? Whenever we decide to display that component, it will run this once, whatever's inside. And then the third is runs every render, or in other words, it's just going to, every time like anything changes anywhere, anytime React has to recompute what's on the UI, it's going to also rerun this. So yeah, these are the 3 different ways that you can use it. Generally, it's like safest to just have some like a very few dependencies. It keeps it pretty simple. And another like tidbit, don't worry about this, we won't use it, but in some cases you might, in a useEffect, keep track of something like a connection to some other service or something. And whenever we like rerun or recompute this component, it's going to get rid of like everything about that connection. And so it's like we lose a handle to the connection and we have no way to close it. And so sometimes what happens is you just build up multiple connections. Same thing happens with event listeners. If you set an event listener and you have no way to turn off that event listener because it re-rendered, so it made a new one on top of it, you're gonna get weird behavior when you have like multiple event listeners going off over the same event. Yeah, so there's the option to, in this callback, you can return a function that will be used as the cleanup function. So whenever React needs to re-render this component, it'll run that first to make sure that we completely reset it, and then we can add a new connection on top, so that way there's only one. Oops, not yet. Okay. Back to it. Okay. So let's utilize useEffect here to, every time something changes, we're gonna say whenever our to-dos change, we need to update what's in local storage. Okay, so I'm going to define a useEffect. I like to put all my like hooks up top. So I'm gonna call useEffect, and then I'm going to make a function here, and I'm going to say that this function is going to depend on to-dos. So whenever to-dos changes, whenever this list changes, it's going to run this. And it can do that because the way we're setting to-dos, right, is we're calling a function from React. So of course, React is able to know when we're actually setting to-dos, and it can make sure that whenever we do call this function, that whenever re-renders, it will run this effect as well. Okay, so to do this, basically, we call local storage.set item. We'll create an item called to-dos, and we'll set the value to be whatever to-dos like currently is. Actually, no, we need to encode this as a string, so I'm going to say json.stringify to-dos. And that's it for that. So every time this to-dos changes, it's going to update it. Now we also, whenever we like create this component, we need to initialize the state of these to-dos to be whatever we already had in local storage. So I need to say local storage dot get item. I think I need to do like a parsing as well. JSON dot parse local storage dot get item. We're gonna get to-dos, and if to-dos has nothing in it, we'll just add this like or as a fallback that says that basically if this is a falsy value, meaning if it's like null, undefined, empty, it's going to give you this fallback of just an empty array. So if this person has never been here before, like to this app before, and they've never set anything to local storage, it should just fall back to this. That's the wrong one. I flipped the order of these. Okay, so if I do a thing like that, then I reload the page. You see before, right, when we reloaded the page, it would like erase everything. But now that we're saving it to local storage, when I reload the page, it'll fetch them back from local storage. And so now we have like persistent to-dos. Do another thing, add, and then boop, right? And if I reload, I should say, if I click one of these and I reload, it keeps the exact same state. So there you go. We can do even more. I can clear this like list pretty easily with another simple function. We'd say like function clear list. Okay. Just to be consistent, clear to-dos. And it's actually very simple. You just say like set to-dos to be an empty list. And we want to make sure there's a way to actually do that. So at the bottom of our list, we'll say, well, make a new button, and we'll say on click, clear to-dos. And say clear. Let's keep going the wrong way. Okay, there we have that, and I can click that, and it'll completely erase our list of to-dos. If I reload, you see it already cleared them out of local storage because I erased the list, and then the use effect ran and it set the whatever's in storage to be an empty list as well. So I don't have to like worry about the way that all of these things like kind of happen, right? As long as I have this part dependent on to-dos and I'm changing the to-dos however I want, it will run it and it'll like it'll react to those changes, okay? Yeah, okay. So I have that. What else should we do? Maybe we want to like delete an individual item in the list. At this point, I'm kind of just winging it. Like whatever else we want to add, we can add. Yeah. Let's say we want to delete specific items in the list. Okay. Not too hard to do. Say delete to do. And just like the toggle to do, right, where we set the status, we kind of need to know which to do we're deleting. So we'll just take that in as an argument. Say set to dos equals kind of honestly, we're going to take this and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to copy like most of this. The difference is we're just not going to include this element at all. There you go. There's probably like another way to do that, but that's like the pretty simple way. And on the to-do, we also need to tell it what that function is, right? So it knows that it can delete to-dos. So I say delete to-do, is delete to do, pass in the index. And let's say after like this paragraph, this is getting like kind of long, so my formatter is letting me down today. We can at least do that much. Okay, and then we'll say like after this, we want to add a button. Let's say it's going to be, sorry, not called delete. It's called, let's just be, should make it a button. We should make it a button. Delete. We need to take in that prop that we passed and delete to-dos. The reason I like doing TypeScript is because it can like autocomplete like a lot of this. It knows exactly what I'm trying to do because it's all typed out. Delete to-dos. Yep. On click, I'm gonna call it. Here we go. I'm gonna keep doing that the whole time. Do a thing that, and then I can call this, and that does not work. Why doesn't to-dos work? Delete to-do, set to-dos. Delete. Oh, did I misspell something? It's probably this. If I like misspell that, it won't recognize it, so it's not going to update that. So there we go. Okay, so now it deletes the to-dos. I keep like just trying all the things just to make sure it like works the way we expect. But yeah, cool. Okay, this looks pretty ugly, so let's see. We have, I think, like 30 more minutes in here, right? So now we can actually kind of make this look hopefully a lot better. So I'm going to introduce something called Tailwind CSS. I'll go to the website. This is not on like the, actually it is on the docs if I find that window. Here we go. So this is Tailwind CSS. Basically, it's a bunch of utility classes. If you've ever heard of Bootstrap, I think that's what they use in WebTech. It's very similar to that, except it has there's a lot more like convenient utility classes than Bootstrap offers. So at this point, yeah, if you need to go, like, you're welcome to. This is totally just like an extra thing that I'm doing because we have time, and there's always like more to show here. So I guess real quick before we get into this, I also just I gotta do some quick plugs. Number one, if you're interested in joining ACM projects where we utilize React as well as like a whole bunch of other web technologies, if you're into like web development and you like working on like pretty large projects with actual users, in fact, like our membership portal is made by ACM projects with like our tech stack. So if you're interested in doing more of this stuff, or at least just learning about it, I put out a lot of resources to teach people with the hopes that they will eventually join projects. But if you want to just like be a learner and just like learn this stuff, go ahead and join the Discord. So I'll give you all a second. And then the other thing is, if you haven't already, register for Rowdy Hacks. This is our upcoming hackathon. It's going to be October 25th, 26th weekend, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, just a reminder, huh? You're not? Dude.
It's free parking and free food.
Yeah. A lot of really cool perks. Cool. You do have to be older, 18 or older. All right. There we go. I'm gonna move this over just so I stop messing that up. All right, let's get into Tailwind. If y'all Time. Okay, so it's pretty easy install. They want you to create the project. We already did that. We do need to install Tailwind, so I'm going to copy this command, and I'm just going to go over to our terminal. I'm going to kill the dev terminal. I'm going to run this command. So we're going to install Tailwind and Tailwind Vite, which is like how Tailwind interacts with like our build tool. So there we go. I run those, and then I need to add these 2 lines to our it's really tiny here. It says vite.config.ts. So I need to add these 2 lines. That's down here for me. Add the import. Then we're going to use the import with a single line call. Have this weird. Okay, like that. So now, just like that, like that's it. Actually, one more thing. We do have to add this special import into our, we'll use the app.tsx like that. So yeah, I can go back to running our dev server. Run dev. And let's start like styling this up using some Tailwind CSS. So if I go to our app, and I go to this to-do list. Let's see, this is what it currently looks like. Automatically, Tailwind has some like default stylings that kind of changes this up. As you can see, it looks very, it's a lot more like flat, and certain like button stylings are kind of just erased. But this is like a better place to start in order to like continue styling our page. So I can also, let's go ahead and make this to-do list like header a little bit bigger. Let's put it in the center. All the styling stuff that I could have done in CSS, but this is going to make it a lot easier to like rapidly just prototype. Okay, so I can say I have to add class name. This is just a special thing about React. When you make class names, you have to call the sorry, when you add classes, you have to call it class name instead of just class. So class name equals, and then we'll add, let's say we want to make the text larger, so we'll say text-2xl. And I also want to make sure the text gets centered on the page, so I'll add text-center. And just like that, we have our to-do in the center. It's still kind of small, so I can just like up this value as much as I want. Boom, big to-do. Okay. What else can we do? We can do so many things with this. If I want, I'm going to turn this into like an actual div. And I'll add more classes to this. We'll just like give everything a padding so that it's not like all up on the edges of the screen. So I can say p dash and whatever size padding I want. Let's say p-4. And you can see I have this like Tailwind extension in VS Code. It shows you exactly what like this class is that I'm setting. So I have like padding, and then it does this like calculation with the spacing variable times 4, and what that evaluates to is 1 rem or 16 pixels. Yeah, so if you like need those values, they're right there as you're like typing everything out. Yeah, it's really cool. I would check out the Tailwind extension for VS Code. So there's padding, and if I look at this, you see everything is now a little bit off of like the edge of the screen, which is like generally just a little bit nicer. What else? My input has become invisible. So maybe I want to like add a border around that again. I'll go into to-do.jsx, and I'll go to my, sorry, no, not here. It is here. Input. I'll add a class name to this. Class name equals, say border. Just adding border is going to like add some, something around it, but I don't really like how sharp the corners are, so I like to add a border radius. So I'd say border dash MD. Is that what it is? Actually, I think it's like, what is the? I think is it rounded? Yeah, it's rounded dash MD, and so that adds like just a little bit of corner radius to all of that. Stuff like that. Okay, so let's see, 2, 3. Don't know why Why is delete on there as like a thing? Oh, I see. So if it's like empty, okay, yeah. So you see, this is kind of messed up, right? The way it's rendering this, not very good. So we can do a little bit better than this. Let's like remodel our to-do a little bit. Honestly, I think what I'll do is, what's the best thing to do here? We need to start with maybe just adding some, we'll wrap this in a div. Sorry if the formatting looks like awful. Let me see if I can fix it. Yeah. Okay, so in this div, I can add more classes. Class name equals, we'll give it a border. We'll call it, give it a rounded medium as well. The other thing Tailwind helps with is consistency. So I used rounded medium before, and I'll use it again. And so these are going to have the same border radius, right? So that's instead of like manually setting those values and having them kind of change in your CSS. I know that happens when you get like a lot of CSS, you kind of forget what the value was before, and it just becomes a lot harder to like set those things. Tailwind makes it a lot easier by giving you like finer or like not finer, but more restricted increments for your stylings, and so you're less likely to be off by like just a little bit. Okay, so you can see this is taking up the whole page. We can also fix that and say like with min. So that's going to, oh, that's a little too small. What else can we do? This button, put good dash. What does this look like? It's kind of the same thing. I think, is there a fit? Sorry, I think fit is what I want to use. Yeah, so fit is going to like shrink it as much as possible without like forcing anything to break lines and that kind of thing. So it's going to look like that. Yeah.
How much longer are you really
We can wrap it up if we need to.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Like I said, y'all are welcome to go. If you have time, you can stick around. But if you need to go, yeah, you're welcome, more than welcome to. I'm basically done with like all of the normal React stuff. Yeah, right. So I have that. Let's see what else we can add, just so that we like kind of make this a little bit clear what we're doing here. What else might be useful? I could add padding to this, just because like now we have the border that's like right up on it, so I can say like padding equals, let's say 2. Just gives it a little bit of space to breathe. Still kind of not super happy with it, but over time like you can make something pretty good looking. We can also set the background really easy, so I can say background or BG dash, and let's use like slate, and there's like increments of 100 here. So I could say BG slate equals like 300, and so that kind of adds this like gray color. I don't really like that gray, but there's like a lot of color options. There's like an actual gray, so it's like that, something like very like small. Okay. So honestly, I think I'm going to leave it there, but I'll just show you guys like the way Tailwind's docs are. It's pretty easy to find like most things you're trying to do. So if I scroll down here, like it has something for every single like type of class that you want to do. If I want to set spacing, I can search for spacing. There's different types, but just spacing in general. Wait, this is not the right spacing page. Spacing. Here we go. Okay, so this is like the main spacing section. There's padding and margin, and it shows you every single like class option that there is. And if you go down even further, it'll show you like what you can do with those, or what they look like. So if you want to add vertical padding on just the top and bottom, right? Then you would just say py dash whatever value. So Tailwind is like super useful. It's what we use in projects. Given more time, I could definitely make this look a lot better, but I just wanted to kind of give you the rundown on like how Tailwind works for styling. But yeah, that is all I have for y'all.